In the quiet of suburban Austin, Texas, Lauren's life seemed like an example of the American dream. A cozy house with a spacious backyard, 2 beautiful children, and a stable income provided by her husband, Jack. But behind the exterior idyll, there was an emptiness that Lauren could no longer ignore. Every day her routine started the same way. The morning alarm went off at 6:30, breakfast was prepared for the children, school fees, and then long hours of solitude in a house that looked more like an exhibition exhibit than a place to live. Jack was a successful manager at a large technology company, and his job required maximum engagement. He left the house early, returned late, and if he stayed at home he would bury himself in his laptop. Lauren couldn't remember the last time they'd talked to each other for more than 2 minutes. That Friday night, when Jack announced that he would be late due to a meeting, Lauren felt disappointment mixed with relief. That meant she was going to the charity dinner alone again. They had always gone to such events together at least before, but in recent years Jack had either found excuses or simply forgotten. She was wearing her favorite blue dress, which Jack had once liked. Lauren's hair fell softly to her shoulders, and light makeup accentuated her still youthful face. The Austin Marriott Hotel was packed with people. Conversations were heard everywhere, champagne glasses were clinking. Lauren picked up a glass of white wine and looked around for familiar faces. She knew that the evening would turn back into routine conversations about children and the eternal pretense that everything was fine with her. But this time everything went differently. "Lauren? It's you?" She turned around at the sound of a voice that sounded familiar to her. Nick was standing in front of her, the same Nick from college. Time had barely touched him. The same confident look, the same smile that had once driven her crazy. He looked like he had just stepped off the cover of a magazine. "Nick, God, how many years have passed?" Her voice sounded a little louder than she expected, and there was surprise mixed with joy in it. He hugged her lightly, the scent of his light perfume momentarily transported Lauren to the past. "You haven't changed at all," he said with a smile. "And you're still flattering," she laughed, trying to hide her awkwardness. They found an empty table in the corner and sat down. The conversations flowed naturally, as if not 2 decades had passed between their last meeting and today. "Nick told me that he now runs a chain of art galleries and came to Austin on business." Lauren listened to him, laughing at his stories about work and travel, and found herself feeling, for the first time in a long time, not just like a wife and mother, but like a woman, interesting and desirable. "What do you do?" "What is it?" he asked, leaning back in his chair. Lauren hesitated. Her usual routine suddenly seemed too boring for someone as light and free as Nick. "Well, I'm taking care of the house, the kids. Jack, my husband, works hard." She tried to smile, but her voice gave her away. "It sounds intense," he replied, choosing his words. "Although you've always been like this, you know, alive, searching." His words struck a chord with her. He noticed something about her that no one had noticed for a long time, not even herself. The evening flew by unnoticed. Nick took her phone number, "In case you want to meet for a cup of coffee." When Lauren returned home, the children were already asleep and Jack, as always, was working in the office. She was standing in the hallway, holding her shoes in her hands and looking at the door of his room. For the first time in a long time, she felt that her life could be different. Time passed in a blur. After that charity event, Lauren and Nick started chatting more often, even though it seemed like something casual and harmless. Their first meeting took place in a small cafe in the city center. Lauren convinced herself that this was just a friendly meeting to reminisce about old times. Nick arrived a little earlier and had already taken a table by the window. When Lauren entered, he raised his hand in greeting, and his smile lit up her from the inside. He looked like he had just stepped out of a fashion magazine, in a perfectly fitting light-colored shirt with the sleeves rolled up. "I'm glad you came," he said, getting up to help her take off her coat. "Of course. Who would refuse a good coffee?" Lauren replied with a slight smile, trying to sound casual. The conversation between them flowed easily. They reminisced about old university days, laughing at forgotten stories and jokes. Nick was a good listener. His gaze was focused only on her, and it made Lauren feel a long-forgotten sense of importance. "When was the last time you drew?" Nick asked suddenly, sipping his coffee. Lauren looked at him in surprise. "God, I don't even remember. Probably before Ben was born. I remember how you could spend hours painting in the studio, forgetting about everything in the world." "Your work was amazing," he said with a slight reproach. "It's been a long time, Nick. Life, it's a little different now," she replied, lowering her gaze. But there was a spark in his words that made her think. The following weeks turned into a whirlwind. Their meetings became more frequent. Coffee in the morning, quick calls in the afternoon, and sometimes even lunch, which dragged on for hours. Lauren justified this to herself by saying that Nick was an old friend, a man with whom she could relax and be herself. One day they met at a contemporary art gallery, where Nick invited her under the pretext of showing new works. Lauren accepted the invitation, even though she knew deep down that it was more than just a walk. The gallery was small but stylish, with high white walls and diffused light that accentuated the details of the paintings. Nick talked about each artist with such enthusiasm that Lauren couldn't take her eyes off his face. "You have to see this," he said, leading her to an abstract work with vivid strokes of red and white. "It's like an explosion of emotions, don't you think?" Lauren stared at the painting, but her mind was elsewhere. This feeling of freedom she felt around him was stronger than anything she had felt in recent years. "You can still be like this," he said as if reading her mind. "Which one?" She looked at him, trying to hide how much those words had affected her. "Free. The real one. You're still like that, Lauren, you just forgot that." At home, everything remained unchanged. Jack came in late, sometimes even forgetting to have dinner. On the rare evenings when they sat together, their conversations boiled down to domestic issues. "Will you take Lily to practice?" Or, "Has Ben done his homework?" Lauren was beginning to feel like she was living in two parallel realities. With Nick, her world was full of light, emotions and life. With Jack, he resembled a viscous swamp, where every day was similar to the previous one. "You look happy," her friend Carol once remarked as they were drinking coffee. "Just trying to keep myself in shape," Lauren replied, even though she knew it was a lie. But even such small things did not attract Jack's attention. He was too busy with his own business, immersed in his work as if it was his only escape from reality. Nick sent her a text one evening. "Do you have time tomorrow? I want to show you a place." Lauren stared at the phone screen for a long time. She knew she should say no, but instead her fingers typed in a short yes. The next day he drove her out of town. It was a secluded park overlooking a lake. They sat on a wooden bench, and Nick told her stories about his travels, about the people he had met, about how he had once been lost in the woods in Europe. Lauren was laughing, and then, catching his gaze, she felt her breathing stop. It was the moment when the line between friendship and something more began to blur. "Lauren, you know you're special, right?" he said, his voice low but confident. She turned back to the lake, feeling her cheeks burn. "Nick, don't." Her voice cracked. "What? Because it's true?" He leaned a little closer, but he didn't touch her. The world stopped for a second. Lauren knew that if she allowed herself to cross that line, there would be no turning back. But for some reason her inner voice was silent. The second dragged on like an eternity. Their gazes locked, and Lauren felt a long-forgotten feeling flutter in her chest, something between fear and attraction. Nick was sitting very close, his face illuminated by the soft light of the setting sun, and at that moment he looked not only confident but also vulnerable. "You've always been special to me, Lauren," he said, breaking the silence, his voice hoarse and almost a whisper. Lauren swallowed hard, her heart pounding. She looked away, trying to hide her emotions, but it only increased the tension between them. "Nick, this is wrong," she whispered, but there was no confidence in her voice. "What's wrong?" "Feel it? To be alive?" He leaned slightly closer but still didn't touch her. His words, like a soft blow, hit the very core of her confusion. She had been suppressing herself for so many years that she had almost forgotten what it was like to be alive. Her gaze fell back on the lake. The water sparkled like a mirror of her thoughts. Restless, anxious, but surprisingly beautiful. "I have a family, Nick. Children." She began, but her voice faltered. "I know. I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to know that you deserve to be happy, Lauren." His voice was soft, but there was genuine strength in it. Those words made her shudder. No one asked her if she was happy, or thought about how she felt. Nick reached out and lightly touched her fingers. It was a barely perceptible touch, but it sent a wave of warmth through Lauren's body. She didn't pull her hand away, but she didn't squeeze his hand either. They sat in complete silence, in which only the sounds of nature and their breathing could be heard. "Nick, she began, but at that moment her phone rang. She shuddered and hurriedly pulled it out of her bag. Jack's name appeared on the screen. Lauren froze, staring at the screen as if it might condemn her. "Will you answer?" Nick asked calmly, removing his hand and looking away, giving her space. She nodded and picked up the phone. "Hi, Jack," she said, trying to sound like nothing much was going on. "Hi, where are you? Lily can't find her cleats, and Ben says he has problems with his laptop. Will you be home soon?" "Yes, I'm about to," she replied, feeling reality returning too abruptly. "Good. Try not to linger," Jack said, and hung up without asking where she was or with whom. She put the phone away and looked at Nick. His gaze was calm, but there was a slight sadness in it. "You need to go," he said, getting up from the bench. Lauren stood up, feeling as if her legs had turned to lead. They walked slowly back to the car. Nick had never touched her, but she felt his presence too strongly. When they got to her car, he opened the door for her and looked at her. "Thanks for tonight, Lauren. I really wanted you to remember who you really are." She didn't say anything, just got into the car, avoiding his gaze. When she started the engine, Nick knocked on the window. She rolled down the window. "If you want to talk again, you know where to find me," he said, smiling the same smile that made her heart skip a beat. Lauren left, but she couldn't stop thinking about what had happened by the lake. She knew that she had taken the first step into a dangerous area, and she understood that there might be no turning back. The night was surprisingly warm for November. Lauren looked out at the city lights from the window of the hotel room that Nick rented, just to sit and talk. But the conversations ended an hour ago. Now she was standing by the window, wrapped in a sheet, feeling two irreconcilable feelings mix in her chest: euphoria and guilt. It all started as just another meeting. Nick invited her to the exhibition, but it ended with a glass of wine in a small bar, and then this number. Lauren knew that the moment when everything crossed the line was not an accident, but the result of her own decisions. "What are you thinking about?" Nick asked softly, coming closer. His voice was as soft as velvet. She turned around, feeling his warmth. He was standing very close, dressed only in trousers, his shirt was carelessly thrown on an armchair. "About what I've done," she replied, her voice almost a whisper. "You didn't do anything," he said, reaching up and gently brushing a lock of hair from her face. "You were just being honest with yourself." These words sounded comforting, but in Lauren's head was the voice of Jack, her husband, who returned home to their children every day. He might not have paid attention to her the way Nick did, but he was her family, her anchor. She pulled back, pulling the sheet higher, as if trying to shield herself from her own thoughts. "Nick, that was a mistake," she finally said. "You think so?" He looked straight into her eyes, his face showing neither condemnation nor surprise. "Yes," she looked away. "I have a family. I can't do this." "But you've already done that, Lauren," he said, not moving. She felt her legs tremble and sank into a chair, trying to collect her thoughts. Nick came over, sat down across from her, and handed her a glass of water. "I don't want you to torture yourself. It wasn't planned, but we both wanted it. You deserve to be happy." Those words stung her again. They sounded like Nick saw something in her that she was afraid to admit. "It's not that easy, Nick," she finally said. "I have Jack and the kids. I can't ruin everything." He was silent, letting her speak. Then he said softly, "I'm not asking you for anything more, but I think you already know what you want." When Lauren returned home, it was past midnight. The house was quiet, except for the soft light from Jack's office coming through the crack in the door. She quietly climbed the stairs, trying not to wake the children. Opening the bedroom door, she leaned against the wall, taking off her shoes, and felt a wave of guilt wash over her. What happened seemed both real and unreal. She looked at the bed where she and Jack had shared their nights for the past 15 years, and felt that the betrayal was not only physical. In the morning, everything returned to normal. Jack left for work earlier than usual, leaving a short message in the kitchen. "Don't forget to pick up Lily from training." Lauren stared at the note and felt empty. She expected her torment to be visible to everyone, but no one noticed anything. Over the next week, Nick texted her, but Lauren didn't respond. She avoided thinking about him, but it proved impossible. Every time her phone vibrated, her heart sank. One morning, she left the house to take Lily to school and saw Nick's car parked across the street. He was leaning against the hood, a permanent smile on his face. "Nick, what are you doing here?" "What is it?" she asked, stopping on the sidewalk. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay," he replied. "You can't just come here." Her voice was harsh, but inside she felt a warm wave pass through her body. "I know, but you're not answering my messages and I want to talk." "We don't have anything to talk about," she replied, looking around to make sure the neighbors couldn't see them. "Lauren, that's not true." He came closer but didn't touch her. "I know how you feel because I feel the same way." Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. "I can't, Nick. I have a family. Do you have yourself?" His voice was low but firm. The words pierced her. Nick got back into the car and drove away, leaving her standing on the sidewalk, feeling the reality of her life crumble under its own weight. Lauren knew she had to make a choice, but every option seemed impossible. The morning was surprisingly quiet, as if nature itself had a premonition that this day would change a lot. Lauren woke up to the sound of the bedroom door opening. Jack came in with 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He looked tired, but there was something unusual about his face, a determination that had been rare in recent years. "Good morning," he said, handing her a cup. "Morning," Lauren replied, sitting up in bed. She caught herself thinking for a second that she couldn't remember the last time Jack had brought her coffee in bed. He sat down next to her, sighed, and looked at her. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he began. "I know that I was not the best husband." Lauren froze, clutching the mug tighter in her hands. "What are you talking about?" Her voice sounded cautious, but her stomach clenched. "About us. About how we've grown apart." Jack looked into her eyes. "I increasingly feel that we have become like neighbors, not like a family." Those words hurt her, but she knew he was right. "I want to fix this," he continued. "I have a few days off next week. Let's go somewhere. Just you and me." Lauren wasn't expecting this. Jack rarely made spontaneous suggestions, especially like this. She knew the answer should be obvious, but her thoughts immediately returned to Nick. "I don't know, Jack," she said, trying to gain time. He touched her arm. "Give us another chance." His words were sincere, and it broke her. She couldn't look him in the eye, knowing that she had been with another man a few days ago. "Okay," she finally managed. Jack smiled, his face lit up with hope. Later that day, while Jack was at work, Lauren was sitting in the kitchen with her phone in her hands. Her fingers were running nervously over the screen, and her heart was pounding. She knew she had to text Nick. It was the only way to move on. Finally, gathering her courage, she opened the chat. "Nick, I can't go on with this. I have a family. Sorry." The message seemed final. She pressed send and felt her heart stop for a moment. The phone started shaking almost immediately. "Are you sure this is what you want?" His answer was short, but each letter felt like a punch. She closed the phone and threw it on the table, unable to look at the screen. The following days were filled with preparations for the trip. Jack ordered a small house on the shore of the lake, where they once went before the children were born. Lauren tried to focus on her plans, but her thoughts kept returning to Nick. In the evening, a few hours before departure, Lauren picked up the phone again. No new messages from Nick. It was both a relief and a disappointment. She was lost in memories of how he looked at her, how he told her that she deserved to be happy. But Jack tried too. He was showing that he wanted to reconnect them, and she felt she had to at least try. The lake house was perfect. The antique wooden walls, the fireplace, the smell of pine trees, everything reminded her of the days when she and Jack were happy. The first night they sat by the fireplace, Jack poured them a glass of wine and began to tell stories from his childhood. Lauren was smiling, but her mind was still elsewhere. "What are you thinking about?" Jack suddenly asked, his voice soft but with a note of concern. "About how long it's been since we've done this," she replied, pointing to the glass. "Yes," he nodded. "I forgot what it's like just to be with you." His words stung her again. She wanted to feel something strong, something sincere, but inside everything was mixed up. That evening, for the first time in a long time, they spent the night hugging each other. It felt like the beginning of something new. The evening at Lauren's house went on as usual. Lily was doing her homework in the kitchen, Ben was playing computer games in his room, and Jack, as always, was sitting in the study, intently typing something on the keyboard. Lauren had just finished washing the dishes and was about to pour herself a glass of wine when there was a soft knock on the door. She froze for a moment. Neighbors usually didn't come unannounced, and couriers always left packages at the entrance. Wiping her hands on a towel, Lauren headed for the door. There was no one on the threshold. Only a small white envelope was lying on the mat. She picked it up and examined it. No signatures, no return address. After closing the door, Lauren returned to the kitchen and carefully opened the envelope. As soon as she pulled out the contents, she felt the blood drain from her face. It was a photograph. The picture showed her and Nick sitting on a bench by the lake. Lauren recognized that moment immediately. Her face was tense, and he was looking at her as if the whole world around him didn't exist. There was an inscription on the back of the photo. "I know." Lauren couldn't take her eyes off the photo. Her head was buzzing, her thoughts were confused. Who did this? Oh. Her gaze instinctively fell on the window and she closed the curtains. "Mom, is everything okay?" Lily asked, noticing her worried face. "Yes, honey, I'm just a little tired," Lauren replied, trying to sound calm. She quickly hid the photo and the envelope in the kitchen drawer, locking it with a key. Panic seized her inside. Someone knew. And that someone could destroy everything. The night passed restlessly. Lauren couldn't sleep, tossing and turning, while Jack was breathing calmly next to her. Every sound outside the window made her shudder. She knew she had to do something, but she didn't know where to start. In the morning, when Jack left for work and the children went to school, Lauren sat down at the table and took out a photo. Her gaze darted over Nick's face, her own expression, and the writing on the back. She decided to call Nick. "Lauren?" His voice was quiet, almost soothing. "We need to meet," she said, interrupting him. "Right now." They met in a cafe on the outskirts of the city, where hardly anyone could see them. Nick was sitting at a table in the corner, and his face immediately tightened when he saw her. "What happened?" "What is it?" he asked when she silently placed the photo in front of him. Nick looked at the picture carefully, then looked up at Lauren. "Damn," was all he said. "Who could have done this?" she whispered, feeling her voice tremble. Nick shook his head, his eyes thoughtful. "I don't know. No one could have known, except..." "Except who?" Her voice cracked. "I had a problem with one of the staff at the gallery," he began. "She was a little obsessive. Maybe she was following me." "Obsessive?" Lauren felt a mixture of anger and fear boiling in her chest. "Are you saying that because of you, she knows about me now?" Nick tried to touch her arm, but Lauren pulled away. "I'll figure it out, I promise," he said, looking her straight in the eye. "You better figure it out fast, Nick. I have a family," she whispered, standing up. When Lauren returned home, she couldn't find a place for herself. She checked the front door, locked all the windows, and turned on the surveillance cameras that Jack had installed a couple of years ago. Her inner world was bursting at the seams. In the late afternoon, Jack returned from work, looking tired, but noticed her tense state. "Is everything okay?" "What is it?" he asked, taking off his jacket. "Yes, it's fine. It's just a hard day," Lauren replied, trying to look calm. Jack nodded and went into the office, but his gaze lingered on her a little longer than usual. Lauren tried to distract herself, but she couldn't. She kept coming back to the photo, to the words, "I know." Who is this man? What does he want? Her phone rang. It was Nick. "Lauren, I talked to her. She claims it's not her. I don't believe her, but I have no proof." "Fine," she replied sarcastically. "Then who is it?" "I'll think about it. Just don't panic." "Don't panic? Do you understand what can happen? If Jack finds out?" Her voice got louder. "Lauren, I'll handle this," he interrupted. She disconnected the call and threw the phone on the couch. Later that evening, she heard Jack coming up the stairs. Her heart skipped a beat when he entered the bedroom. "Are you sure you're okay?" "What is it?" he asked, looking at her with a serious look. "Yes, Jack, I'm just tired," she replied. He didn't say anything, but his gaze betrayed that he was noticing something strange. It all started with the fact that Lauren felt the gaze on her. She was standing by the kitchen window, pouring water into the kettle, when she noticed Jack, who entered the room and silently looked at her. There was something new in his eyes, something she couldn't read right away. "Good morning," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We need to talk," Jack replied, not looking away. Those words came out of the blue. Lauren froze, her fingers trembling. She put the kettle on and wiped her hands on a towel, trying to stay calm. Jack sat down at the table, crossing his arms over his chest. "I know, Lauren." Her heart skipped a beat. There was silence in the room, broken only by the ticking of the wall clock. "You know what?" Her voice sounded too weak. "About you and Nick," he said calmly, but there was none of his usual confidence in his tone. Lauren sat down across from him. Her head was spinning, as if the air had suddenly become too heavy. "How?" "I'm sorry," she gasped. "I hired a detective," Jack admitted, lowering his eyes. "When I noticed that you had changed, I couldn't just look at it and not understand what was going on." The words hit her like an electric shock. Her fears were confirmed, but she couldn't believe that Jack would actually do such a thing. "Were you following me?" "What is it?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and shame. "Yes," he said, looking up at her. "I knew you wouldn't tell me the truth." Lauren couldn't speak. Two emotions were fighting inside her: rage at the violation of her privacy and guilt that he was right. "I wasn't going to make a scene. I sent you the photo so that you would understand that I know. But I wanted you to come to me on your own," he continued, his voice remaining steady, almost gentle. "Why, Jack? To reproach me?" She looked him straight in the eye for the first time, her voice filled with pain. "No," he shook his head. "To understand what happened to us." Silence covered them again. Lauren lowered her eyes, feeling everything crumble inside. "I made a mistake," she finally said, her voice barely audible. "It's not just a mistake, Lauren," he said. "It's a cry for help. I understand that." She looked up at him. There was no anger in his eyes, only weariness and sadness. "Why didn't you yell at me?" "What is it?" he asked softly. His words struck a chord with her. I tried, Jack, she replied, her voice cracking. But you never listened. He ran a hand over his face. I've lost you, Lauren. And I know it's my fault. She looked at him, feeling her heart constrict at his words. What do you want from me? What is it? She asked. I want to fix everything, he replied, looking into her eyes. We've been together for so many years. You were my family, my rock. I don't want to lose you. Jack got up and walked over to her, kneeling down. It was unexpected and unusual to see him so vulnerable. Lauren, I know this is going to be difficult. But if you're ready, I want to try again. Her eyes filled with tears. She didn't know what to say. She wanted to scream that everything was too complicated, that she wasn't sure of her feelings, but there was a sincerity in his eyes that touched her to the core. It's not that easy, Jack, she finally said. I know, he replied. But I'm ready to fight for you if you give me a chance. That evening, Lauren sat alone in the bedroom for a long time. Jack's words echoed in her head. He knew. He knew all along. But instead of ruining their lives, he held out his hand to her. Her phone vibrated. It was a message from Nick. I'm still here if you want to talk. Lauren put her phone back in the drawer. Her head was buzzing with thoughts, and her heart was racing between the past and the future. A knock on the door brought her out of her trance. Jack looked into the room. Is everything okay? What is it? He asked softly. She nodded. Yes, just thinking, she replied. He came in and sat down next to her. His presence was warm, almost soothing. We'll figure it out, he said, taking her hand. She nodded again, but inside she knew that this was going to be the most difficult choice of her life. It's been a few months since that night that changed everything. Lauren's life was no longer the quiet and monotonous routine she had endured for so long. But now it was not a storm of emotions, but a harmony that she could not even imagine. After a frank conversation, Jack did what she had wanted for a long time, but could not ask. He began to listen to her. Listen not only to her words but also to her emotions, desires and fears. It was hard in the first few weeks. Lauren honestly told him everything, about how she felt lonely, how she met Nick, and how this novel restored her lost sense of importance. She had expected the worst: screams, reproaches, coldness. Instead, Jack surprised her again. I can't change what happened, he said one evening as they sat on the veranda with glasses of wine. But I can change what happens next. He suggested family therapy, and at first Lauren didn't believe it could help. But Jack was persistent. During the first sessions, they both sat in suspense, as if they were afraid to offend each other with an unnecessary word. But gradually, these conversations opened them both up. Lauren described how she felt trapped in a cage. Jack, in turn, admitted that his obsession with work was his way of avoiding his own insecurities. I was afraid I wasn't living up to your expectations, he confessed one day. These words stunned Lauren. She had never thought that Jack could think of himself like that. Gradually, they began to find the little joys that had once bound them. Instead of spending their evenings in different rooms, they started cooking dinner together, walking in the park, and once even spontaneously went to a concert by a local band. But the biggest moment for Lauren was the letter from Nick. It came a few weeks after she had finally cut off all contact with him. In the letter, he thanked her for everything and wrote that he was leaving the city. You've made me a better person, Lauren, he wrote. But your life is with your family. I hope you find the happiness you were looking for. Those words were like a point in her inner conflict. She realized that Nick was an important part of her journey, but not her future. One evening, when the children were already asleep, Jack came out to her on the terrace with a cup of tea. I was thinking about taking Friday off, he said, smiling. You got a day off? That's something new, Lauren teased. I'd like to spend the day with you. It's just the two of us. She smiled and took his hand. That sounds perfect. And at that moment she realized that they had really started over. Their life was far from ideal, but now it had what she valued most: honesty, attention, and love. And deep down, Lauren knew she'd made the right choice. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.